Alright, we're started with a bucket of alcohol and just brushing it on all the contact points and cleaning it all up. So that was not water, that was definitely alcohol. So here we are, unsoldering everything, grabbing the actual capacitors I need. And it's a long, painstaking process. Solder sucker. I had to turn up the temperature to about 730 degrees Fahrenheit on the digital soldering station in order to melt most of that, to liquefy most of that 1964, 1960 spec solder. Right now I'm out of the frame, just doing some other stuff, grabbing some other things. Proceeding forward on it, I guess, and then grabbing wire because one of the capacitors could not reach where its original point was, its negative point. So I had to add some 20 gauge wire, and as I was putting these capacitors on, I was making heat shrink on them, making heat shrink covers for the leads, so they wouldn't touch any of the other resistor leads, so they're not shorting together. So here we are, just keep on doing that, wrapping the wire around the actual point and everything that you need to do. Continuing on, picking up some more capacitors. So I believe the first one I did, I put in the wrong position. You'll see it on the following clips. The third time lapse clip, second time lapse clip. I'm sorry, but you'll see having to take it off and solder it in a different location because it wasn't going out properly. So the audio out through the transistors was not going out, which led to almost an overheat problem. So I'll explain that in the next clip during the smoke test. So everything else went smoothly. No other problems with soldering capacitors on. It's a little bit off-putting taking out those old carbon capacitors and putting in electrolytic capacitors when they're much smaller and fit in the physical size than the actual old capacitors. I mean, the old capacitors are 2 inches long and the new ones are not even a quarter of an inch wide. So a little bit disconcerting. So here we go with the next one is power on smoke test. Time for the smoke test. Let's see if it blows up. Okay, it's plugged in. It passed the power on smoke test, and right now I'm going through all the functions. It took me a little bit too long to realize that with no speakers plugged into it, I won't get any sound. So me just fiddling with everything right now, making sure it's on, adjusting the treble switch because that's how you turn it on. The treble is the on-off switch, and then just going through the different functions, going through AM, FM, FM, AFC with automatic frequency control, and a few other things right now. But it was a relatively simple power on procedure. It was getting hot in one particular place in the main, the lower two transistors. It was getting a little bit too hot right there. I found out why, because I put the capacitors in the wrong place. That's a mistake of taking the capacitors out without actually marking where they were. So continuing just to keep on adjusting the function switch right now, figuring out what's going on, just going through every single function right now and making sure nothing's smoking, nothing's starting to stink, nothing's smelling, nothing visual going on, no swelling of the capacitors or anything. So, and this is where I don't realize it just now, but this is where I go, I'm not getting any sound out of it. What's going on with it? I don't have any speakers hooked up, so yeah, dummy me. I'm trying to adjust the volume right now. Yeah, there's nothing there. You're not going to get anything, dude. I believe I cut after this, and then I go look, now try to tune it, and there we go. Start tuning it right now, and yeah, it changes frequency, but it will not pick up any sound. So there you go. All right, and this is where I'm resoldering. You can see a magical wire appeared on this cut. I hooked up a regular 3.5-inch infinity copper speaker, truck speaker basically, just so I can get something out, and rechecking everything here and listening. I thought I heard a popping before when I powered it off, hooking the speakers back up, and it works. I had to hold the speaker up to my ear in order to hear anything because the auto driver is so messed up. I mean, no volume whatsoever on it. So here it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Touching one of the paper capacitors, and I did notice a louder buzz when I was touching it. So that led me to believe I got to go ahead and replace the capacitors on the audio driver board. So here we are, just wasting time, and we are moving on. So yeah, after a quick 4-hour nap, I continued on and pulled up the audio driver board, removed 6 1/4-inch screws out of the housing so I could pull it up to the side. Working on, I think I replaced, how many did I replace? I replaced, with this scene, I believe I got another scene or so. I've already replaced 6 or 7 capacitors out of this board. You'll see me here in a few minutes, maybe next couple scenes. I put a piece of wire onto, there we go, putting a piece of wire onto the main board to hold it over at 90 degrees so make it easier to actually unsolder and solder the new capacitor, old capacitors out and new capacitors in. Uneventful really right here. I haven't powered it on since. It's still waiting. I still have it looks like about 3 or 4 capacitors left to replace. Soon after I finished this up, the tropical storm Hermine moved on out to Wilmington, North Carolina. So it was way out of our area. The center of rotation was outside of our area. But the wind started kicking up, and then the power went out, so I couldn't really do anything. So the power was out for about 4 hours. So I was basically done at 8:30, 9 o'clock. Couldn't really do anything else. And I was editing this video so I could actually put this together. But lost power, so I couldn't really do anything else on it. So I can't really solder without power. I don't have a battery-powered soldering iron. That'd be nice to have, but this is just kind of a cheapo thing I picked up several years ago because it's just variable voltage. So here we are, just replacing all the caps, and I had to substitute a few of them for different capacitance and up and higher voltage because most of them were 10 volt. Had to upgrade to a 16 volt capacitance and 16 volt voltage, and then a little bit higher capacitance.